From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is from the South. The progressive recovery of electricity continues in Venezuela. The metro in the capital Caracas is up and running as service resumes. The Los Teques metro system is also working again, as well as the state railways. Work on restoring power throughout the country has been constant since U.S. attacks began on the Bolivarian Republic's electricity grid. Let's hear from our correspondent in Caracas, Luis Tavera, with the details.
I'm traveling through various parts of the Venezuelan capital, seeing how the metro lines have resumed service. We've seen quite a lot of people using the metro, and we've spoken to passengers who have said that all the lines are now back in service. But, just like the Minister of Transport said, this is a progressive process. Meanwhile, people continue to use overground transportation, which forms part of contingency routes in several parts of the country. The means are organised by the government and are free through the usual red buses. And it's not only the metro that is back, it's also the railway and train system, like the Miranda to Caracas train. We'll make sure to keep you updated.
That was Luis Tavera from Caracas. And on Monday night, Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro addressed the nation about the latest attacks on the country's electric system as power is progressively restored.
The electrical sabotage was performed to deprive the country of electricity and water and to put people in a state of desperation and violence, a situation promoted by small violent groups.
President Maduro also said the national deployment of the Bolivarian armed forces, together with the people, will ensure the security of the electrical stations.
As General Padrino Lopez and the Almirante Ceballos has informed, the Bolivarian National Armed Force is deployed, guaranteeing the protection of the electrical stations, the water tributaries and substations of the country. At the same time, the Bolivarian National Armed Force is guaranteeing security and peace nationwide. If in the middle of this situation imperialists attempt to take action against us, our Bolivarian National Armed Force are willing to continue battling for our people in my command next to the people in civic military union that will guarantee the territorial, maritime, aerial and sovereignty of the country.
And regarding the 30-day plan to stabilize the electricity system, President Maduro announced the appointment of a new Minister of Electricity and the President of the Electrical Corporation.
The electrical engineer Igor Gavidia assumes the Ministry of Electrical Power from today as a new minister in charge, and he also assumes the presidency of the Corporelec Corporation for the new stage of definitive defeat of the electrical war and the stabilization of the entire electrical system of the country. From today, the electrical engineer Igor Gavidia León takes over these new responsibilities with 25 years of experience in the sector.
Meanwhile, the Supreme Court of Justice has asked the National Constituent Assembly to revoke Juan Guaido's immunity. The president of the Supreme Court said this decision comes after opposition figure Guaidó violated his travel ban in February. The court also ratified the decision to freeze his bank accounts and ban him from selling his properties. The decision will now be submitted to the president of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello. In other news, Israeli soldiers killed a Palestinian man and left 3 others wounded during clashes with troops in the occupied West Bank. Local media reported that Israeli forces raided a number of houses across the West Bank during the night. The Palestinian Health Ministry said the man had lived in Qalandia refugee camp. Israel often carries out raids in the occupied West Bank, claiming such actions are necessary. However, the Palestinian Authority says the raids breach agreements Israel signed up under the Oslo II Accord.
Around dawn, everyone heard heavy gunshots when people moved to see what is happening. We heard Israeli soldiers have been at the scene. There are some injuries, and they arrested 5 members of the same family at Al-Qalandiya refugee camp. They are living at the main Ramallah Jerusalem street.
Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has caused controversy after visiting the Western Wall in Jerusalem. The wall is located in occupied eastern Jerusalem, and in protest, Palestinians are considering recalling their ambassador in Brasilia. Despite previous statements from the Brazilian leader, Bolsonaro finally said the country won't move its embassy to Jerusalem. Rather, Brazil will open a trade and technology center there. The decision comes among internal struggles in Bolsonaro's cabinet on this issue. And during Bolsonaro's visit, Greenpeace activists unfurled a banner with the message, "Stop Amazon Destruction." The activists have urged the president to save the Amazon from the threat posed by farming and mining. Argentina is commemorating the 36th anniversary of the beginning of the Malvinas War, waged between Argentina and the United Kingdom. Operation Rosario began on April 2, 1982. It was a military move planning the expulsion of the British occupation of the Malvinas Islands after 149 years. It began a war that would last 74 days and in which 649 Argentine soldiers died. The military government used the invasion to appeal to patriotism and wrapped itself in the flag as the dictatorship became more aggressive. Today, Mauricio Macri and his cabinet want to renegotiate Malvinas sovereignty with the UK, discarding veterans and their complaints. We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Welcome back. Puerto Rico is urging the U.S. Senate to pass the funds required for the reconstruction of the island after Hurricanes Maria and Irma. The Puerto Rican Governor Ricardo Rosselló has demanded the upper house to approve Project 268, which could assign more than $14,000 million for the affected areas. According to Rosselló, this budget will be mainly used in programs for infrastructure, housing, and education. 27 nurses from 5 Caribbean countries have successfully completed specialized training to care for children with cancer and blood disorders. The nurses hail from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, the Bahamas, Jamaica, and St. Lucia. They completed the pediatric oncology nursing diploma, and this program is part of the University of the West Indies School of Nursing in Trinidad. The final group finished in April. 2 months after the presidential election in El Salvador, the elected president Nayib Bukele has now formed a team to be in charge of the transition of power scheduled for June.
The government of Salvador Sanchez Seren has chosen the government's transition team, and the ministers have started a presentation of their reports on the closing of their time in office.
Quiero reafirmar este día I want to reaffirm the commitment I made since I took office. And one of the wise principles I've learned from people is that we must always find the common points and the opportunities to build together a country where we can progress with dignity, justice, and lasting peace.
2 months after being elected, Nayib Bukele has criticised the current government, accusing it of approving last-minute laws like the budget increase for municipalities. For that reason, he's unilaterally decided not to choose a transition team.
What we have said is that we will suspend any contact with the current government, and we will wait until everything is clarified. We disagree with the decisions made by the current government, and if at the end this transition act doesn't happen, we will do it with the people. We have no problem.
The continuity of social programs promoted by the left-wing government, such as agricultural packs, environmental sustainability, school uniforms and a daily glass of milk, are programs that must remain, say officials.
We haven't got the opportunity yet to report the upcoming government on everything that has been done, what we need to achieve yet, and the great challenges the education system has. We are ready, and the report is very well documented.
Now the social policies are in the hands of the upcoming government. The FMLN, now in opposition, as well as social movements, say they will remain vigilant for the achievements made, not to be overturned.
The Chilean President Sebastián Piñera has signed trade agreements with his Indian counterpart, who is on a tour across South America. With these latest deals, both countries increase the number of products that are exempt from taxation. The two leaders have also signed cooperation agreements regarding geology and cultural exchange programs. Piñera has also reassured his support for India to join the UN Security Council as a permanent member. A bill to reform the system that manages pension funds in Chile is expected to be sent to Parliament. Social movements and unions have taken to the streets to reject the proposal.
People marched to the sound of trombones and songs to demonstrate against the current system that manages the pension funds. Neighbors are looking on from afar, while protesters continue to demand an end to the current system.
When it comes to social services and rights, women are always the most affected. The system that manages our pension funds is one of the best examples.
Retirement pensions in Chile are already extremely low for men, but women receive 20% less than men. This is a system that is supposed to reward individual effort, productivity, but instead condemns maternity and the elderly. That's why they're marching, to demand that the system of pension funds be managed under a universal system of pay-as-you-go. The government of Sebastián Piñera is nowhere to be found at the protests, but in lieu of the protests, it has announced a project to reform the pension fund system that is expected to be debated in Parliament in the upcoming days.
This project will not change the pension fund system and how it's managed. That's why we want to reject how this project is being debated in the Parliament. It should be workers who debate how to change the system towards one that promotes a universal management and that really protects workers.
We are hoping that the government responds to our demands instead of protecting insurance companies, banks, and big corporations that are pressuring for the current system to be maintained, and that only benefits 5% of the population.
A small percentage that runs the most important insurance, health, and education companies, where the money of pensioners and retirees go. The system to manage the pension funds was designed during the dictatorship by the brother of the current president, José Piñera.
The pension system in Chile is constitutionalized, unlike the systems that were established in other countries with different economic, social, and political models. The possibility to change the laws that are important and that benefit the people has become impossible. The votes needed to change the constitutional laws are impossible to reach. The problem here is how the constitution is written.
The current constitution was also implemented by the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet.
Argentina's central bank recognized on Monday that inflation in March and April will rise amid ups and downs of the dollar and rising prices of basic services and products. It said that this month they will keep their interest rates. It insists on using the economic measures that it has been applying for the past 6 months without achieving the expected results. The high interest rates haven't stopped the rise of inflation, which is expected to go from 3.7% in March to 5% in April. Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador insists that the causes of migration in Central America must be tackled. The statement comes in response to the threat by U.S. President Donald Trump to close the southern border if Mexico doesn't stop, quote, illegal migration.
Claro.
Of course. We have to help because Central American migrants pass through our territory, and we have to bring order to that migration so that it's legal and at the same time for human rights to be protected. So that's where we're at. But let's stay calm.
An acid attack survivor has participated in a pageant in the capital of Colombia to speak up about violence against women. According to the Institute of Legal Medicine, there were about 900 cases of acid attacks in Colombia in the last 10 years. In this case, Patricia Espitia went through more than 40 surgeries in Bogotá after she got acid thrown on her face about 11 years ago. Now she has participated in a beauty contest to show strength and call for attention on the prevalence of the acid attacks against women.
I see this as an opportunity to go out on the catwalk and be seen as a woman, and not just as the stereotypical woman that is tall, thin, skinny. We are not going to be constrained by the stereotypical beauty standards. We are breaking it all here. Why? Because we are diverse women. What you see on the runway is love, joy, enthusiasm, and attitude. I did a test for surgery, and that was when I realized what I was doing this. To prove to myself that when you are confident, have a love for God, and you have faith, then you know what life is beautiful and wonderful. Without this, there is nothing, because today I believe that my smile shows that this attack did not destroy me. When I see my photos from before and now, I can tell you that my smile shines brighter, with more intensity, because today I am happy.
In other news, Ecuador has the opportunity to set a historic precedent for the LGBTI community. From Quito, Denise Herrera has a story.
The Constitutional Court of Ecuador has called a hearing to rule on same-sex marriage. The petition was submitted by an LGTB couple after the Ecuadorian Civil Registry Office did not recognize the marriage between persons of the same sex.
I have worked in a foundation for 18 years, and the day before yesterday, a 67-year-old gay person came in. He was alone and very afraid. That cannot continue in Ecuador. It's not that marriage will solve this, but it will help to prevent this from happening in the future.
The legal team of the LGBT couple say that if the court approves the legal consultation on same-sex marriage, all sexually diverse couples will be able to marry, and that will be a historic step in Ecuador.
It helps that the court has requested the legal consultation, and this is the most important court in Ecuador. We are sure that the court will recognize the marriage, which is already recognized in the Constitution. That right to marriage is recognized in Ecuador, and it needs to be put into effect.
Meanwhile, several organizations in favor and against equal civil marriage gather outside the Constitutional Court.
Ecuador has the opportunity to set a precedent. 20 years ago, it was illegal to be LGBTI. Now we have to register another advance for society. It is not only for the community, but for society as a whole.
Marriage can be a right for all citizens, and then will come a new challenge, which is to change the culture and eliminate discrimination against the community.
I'm in favor of the rights being respected. But if it is a man with a man, or woman and woman, next they will be in love with nature, a dolphin, a cat, or whatever. As they say, love is love, but each type of love must have its own laws.
LGBT groups say they are hoping the members of the court members will be more sensitive to their struggle and guarantee the recognition of LGBT rights on same-sex marriage. They pointed out that Ecuador is a country where the Constitution prohibits discrimination. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us.
身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get your body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Chinese aid workers disinfected cyclone-affected areas to curb the cholera outbreak in Mozambique on Monday. Medical aid workers disinfected 41 rooms of cesspools in 16 cholera-infected family homes. They strive to halt the outbreak of cholera. According to official sources, Munava, one of the poorest neighborhoods in the hard-hit city of Beira, has confirmed 20 cholera cases after Cyclone Idai made landfall on March 14th.
We can cut off the transmission routes and protect the families of the cholera patients by disinfecting their living quarters, food, objects and daily supplies that they've been exposed to.
Nepal's Prime Minister Kadda Prasad Oli visited the storm-hit Bara district on Monday and met survivors. More than 30 people were killed and hundreds more were injured in a severe thunderstorm that swept through southern parts of the country over the weekend. The storm, accompanied by heavy rainfall, destroyed buildings and uprooted trees and telephone poles. Pre-monsoon thunderstorms are common in Nepal during the spring season, but are rarely of an intensity that causes high number of casualties. 8 years have passed since the end of the Spanish Civil War, which was won by fascist Francisco Franco and began a 40-year dictatorship. Sadly, his bloody legacy is still alive in today's politics.
On April 1st, 1939, Spanish General Francisco Franco's troops had already taken over most of Madrid. It was the last stage of the Civil War. The bloody armed conflict was coming to an end.
La guerra ha terminado.
The Civil War lasted 3 long years. Fascist troops led by Franco overthrew the leftist Second Spanish Republic. Many thought the horrors were over for Spain, but little did they know that they were only beginning under Franco's rule.
He might have put an end to the war, but at the same time, he started a revenge mission because Franco's regime was an immense vengeance that lasted 40 years.
40 years of dictatorship and repression ended in 1975 with Franco's death. But 2 years later, Spain tried to bury its bloody past with the amnesty law. Many still see it as a way of generating impunity, which still goes on today, thanks to far-right politicians.
Because they continue being Franquistas. The party Vox represents the Spanish right wing. That is not like other European right-wing groups, which are anti-fascist. In this country, the right have been governing for 40 years, and even when the transition arrived, they maintained economic and political power.
There is less than a month until the general election, but Franquismo is still alive in Spain, well embedded in the election campaign. The government has been trying to exhume the dictator's body from his mausoleum in the Valle de los Caídos for almost a year now, but the Popular Party has said if they win, they will stop the process.
It is the right that has halted the exhumation process in many cases, and it is the right wing that also halts the process of annulling the amnesty of Francoist criminals. And who benefits from this? The masterminds of these crimes. Let's just say it out loud.
And so, several organizations are calling for a new political transition.
There should be a process, a second transition that breaks this narrative of common consensus on impunity and silence.
And for this transition to come, associations say it is essential that the Franco regime is taught in depth in schools so that the wounds may finally begin to heal.
The British Prime Minister is under pressure to either leave the European Union without a deal or call for an election. Prime Minister Theresa May will chair a 5-hour cabinet meeting in an attempt to plot a course out of the Brexit storm. May's deal has been defeated 3 times by the House of Commons, which failed to find a majority of its own for any alternative exit plan.
Now I think the Cabinet can say, OK, the ground is perhaps right to come back to Parliament for a 4th time with Mrs May's deal and say to Parliament, look, we've given you 2 chances to come up with something, you failed both times, vote for this deal, otherwise next week there's a real danger of no deal.
The United Nations Human Rights Chief has urged Brunei not to apply the death penalty for adultery and gay sex. A proposed change in Brunei's law would authorize the death penalty for rape, sodomy, robbery, and for the defamation of the Prophet Muhammad, as well as more severe punishment for having an abortion and amputation for theft. The last execution under the death penalty in Brunei was back in 1957. However, the government has made an announcement to implement the penalty starting Wednesday.
The High Commissioner for Human Rights is stressing that religion and human rights are not opposing forces. In fact, many of the fundamental tenets of both are exactly the same. We are calling on the government of Brunei to halt bringing into effect this law and instead to launch a consultation with religious leaders, with government leaders, civil society, and people from various communities to try to come up with legislation that can fight crime, but at the same time uphold the human rights of all the people of Brunei.
With that, we come to the end of this news brief, but you can find more on these stories by going to our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to also join us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.